and welcome to Live at 5 this Wednesday afternoon. So the question that I'm going to be answering today is one that I get asked a lot, particularly when I start teaching, and it is a question that it goes, will my midwife know about hypnobirthing? And also other questions that sort of come hand in hand with this, will my midwife know how to support me? Will they be on board? So that's the question, or those are the questions I'm going to be answering this evening. So years ago, when I first started doing hypnobirthing, bearing in mind that my eldest is now 18, very few people actually knew about hypnobirthing. And when I was in labour with my first daughter, when we said we were using hypnobirthing, we were looked at like we had 3 heads and 10 arms. We were also, told that we weren't in labour and sent, told to go home because I had ages left before I was going to have my baby. And these are the sorts of conversations that people still have in the back of their minds. Things have changed, and they've changed a lot. So in the last, nearly 2 decades, a lot more of our healthcare providers are aware of hypnobirthing, but now a lot of them are training in hypnobirthing as well. So one of the things that I do, as well as teaching parents, is that I do actually teach cohorts of midwives and student midwives as well. We go into hospitals and we go into universities teaching student midwives and midwives about hypnobirthing. So there is far more understanding and knowledge now about it within the profession. That does not mean that everybody knows about it, and it does not necessarily mean that everybody is on board with it either, and we'll cover that in a little while. There are still some reservations amongst some, and it is to do with assumptions of what they think hypnobirthing is. And there are a lot of historic criticisms of hypnobirthing, and that's partly to do with how we used to be taught, and the sort of almost them and us sort of attitude that some methods previously had around hypnobirthing. There were a lot of assumptions that if you'd done hypnobirthing, you were aiming for a particular sort of birth, and people would get very wedded to the idea of having for a few examples, a pain-free birth, or a vaginal birth, or a natural birth. And there were lots of misunderstandings about, the communication aspects of it as well. So sometimes healthcare providers felt they weren't allowed to talk to parents, or they didn't have the language to be able to communicate effectively with parents who were using hypnobirthing. Again, a lot of that has gone by the by these days because we're far more proactive at educating and letting our healthcare providers know about hypnobirthing and how they can support as well. But a lot of that sort of reservation to do with hypnobirthing comes from those assumptions and misunderstandings or miscommunications as well. So we want to I want to reassure you that there are going to be people in your area who do understand hypnobirthing and are going to support you. But sometimes we need to be effective communicators as well to let them know how they can support us best. Now, at the sort of heart of midwifery is a desire to support. So your midwives are there to support you and to help with your birthing, your pregnancy, your labour, your birth and postpartum as well. So let's have a look at the role of a midwife. So midwife means with woman, and that's where the word comes. So you can have male midwives because the role is with woman. And obviously nowadays as well, that's with birthing person as well. But that's where the etymology of the word, not entomology, no insects to do with this, etymology of the word comes from, with woman, midwife. So they are the guardians of normality. They are the what if person. That's really, really reassuring, because when we are giving birth for the first time, or maybe the second time, or maybe we haven't, been in the birthing world, it's really reassuring to know that there's somebody who knows, is this normal? Is this what everybody has? Is this okay? So it's really lovely to have that what if person. They are the guardians of normality. Their area of expertise is physiological birth. And if you joined me last week, you'll know all about physiological birth. That's their area of expertise. So in the UK, our midwives are highly skilled, highly trained practitioners. They go to university for 3 years, or if they're coming across from nursing, they do a conversion course for 18 months. So their area of expertise is straightforward birth. But part of their training is to look at when it deviates away from that normal path and how to deal with it. So a lot of their training is looking at those deviations from normal, how to deal with emergencies, how to bring it back into the realms of normality. And then if they need extra support and extra help, or that birth is becoming more medicalised, then getting the help of other disciplines within our medical field. So their area of expertise is straightforward birth, but they're trained to look out for when it deviates from that. That's really reassuring, because then we know we've got that person who is going to help in whatever eventualities, whatever happens. It is a really, really lovely person to have on board. Now, understanding that they are there to support us is really useful as well. So the role of midwife is very varied. So if you're going to have a home birth, you'll have midwives. If you're going to have a birth in a birth centre, so a midwife-led unit, then you'll have midwives. If you're in a hospital, you will have midwives. Even if you're going for a caesarean birth, you will have midwives with you. So their area of expertise is massive. They have a lot of skills and knowledge to support you. Now, the other thing that's useful to understand is the system within which they are working. So within our maternity services within the UK, their role is to give you personalised care, individualised care plans. But they also have to work within that system. And in that system, there are policies, protocols, guidelines that are there to guide best practice. They are there to have a framework for our healthcare providers to work within. Now, within that system, there is a lot of box ticking, because that is a way of helping to protect the system. It's worth remembering that that's what it's doing. It's there to protect the system and to protect the people working within that system. And with that knowledge, you can then work with your caregiver to have that individualised care plan. So they also have a code within which they need to work. And one of those things in that code is to support parents in their choices. And actually, one of the codes is, respect, support and document a person's right to accept or refuse care and treatment. So basically, you can have what is right for you, but that needs to be documented, and that gives our healthcare provider a protection within the system. So sometimes when we are working within the system, it sometimes feels like we are being pushed in a particular way, or that there is pressure to take a particular course of action or a particular procedure. And that pressure often feels like it is, that we have to do a particular thing. We have to follow this policy, or we have to follow that protocol. And that's not necessarily the case. The framework is there so that the system is supported, but ultimately you have the choice, and that is enshrined within that code, that they have to support you with your choices, But the documentation is really important. So they need to know that you've understood a course of action, for instance, and then they can document that. And once that has been documented, then they are then free to support you with those choices and with those options. So one of the things that we talk about every single week is the brains. It comes down to benefits and risks. What are your benefits and risks of taking a procedure or following a pathway? What are your benefits and risks of not doing that thing? What are your alternatives? What do you want to do? And then you can have that communication with your caregiver, and they can document your choices and options, because then it can support you with your choices and what you would like to be doing, and it gives them that protection to support you as well. Now, that's all in an ideal world. Sometimes, it doesn't necessarily feel like we are being supported in our choices and our options. Now, it's really worth understanding that fear is a massive part of our healthcare providers' everyday life. Fear is not reserved for parents. A lot of parents are fearful of birth, but there are a lot of people who are working within the system who are fearful of coming away from those policies, protocols, guidelines, working outside of that framework. The code protects them from that, but it feels scary working outside of that framework, particularly for some people where that is, the everyday way of working. And so understanding that fear is there, and understanding that communication is a massive step towards working together to get what is right for you in your birth, is really important. Understanding that there are these pressures within the system on our midwives and other healthcare providers as well. So you can communicate with your caregivers. If you still feel that you are not getting the support that you want in the choices that you want for your pregnancy, your labour and your birth, you have got choices. You can ask to change your caregiver. I think in the UK we sometimes forget that because the NHS is free at the point of contact, we forget that we do pay for it. We pay for the NHS. We have the same consumer rights that we've got anywhere else. So if you are not happy with your care, you can ask to be to have a caregiver, an alternative caregiver. So that is one option. You can also, the one thing about that as well is, if you are feeling uncomfortable with a particular person, then chances are they're feeling uncomfortable with you as well. So by seeking out alternatives, you're not necessarily, being horrible or mean or any of those things, which sometimes we do feel. It's perfectly within your rights to do that. But if you're feeling uncomfortable with this relationship, then often they are as well. So by seeking out an alternative caregiver, that can be massively beneficial for you, but also helping them as well. So you can ask for somebody else. We can also ask to see our consultant midwife. Now, if you're in the UK, consultant midwife is an advocate for you. You can ask to have either a referral. Some places it's by referral now. Sometimes you can simply pick up the phone and talk to your local consultant midwife. But whatever's in your area, you can talk to your named midwife and you can get the details so that you can get information about talking to the consultant midwife in your area. You can then have an appointment with them and have things documented, so you don't have to have the same conversation over and over again. You've got that support in that area. But if you're not getting support there either, then you've got other options. We can step outside of the system. You can talk to independent midwives, and there are plenty of independent midwives who work online. So it doesn't mean that you have to, employ them for the whole of your birth, but you can get in touch with them and have an hour's consultation, for example, and talk through your choices and options with them. or you can seek their employment so that they are then your midwife for pregnancy, for labour and birth and postpartum. You can also look for birth keepers who are out there as well, so people like Kemi Johnson, and there are a whole bunch of others out there as well, birth keepers. Now often a birth keeper is a midwife, a trained midwife who has now come away from the registration. They've got massive amounts of skills and knowledge to be able to support you. Sometimes they're birth keepers, sometimes they're birth friends. Lots of people out there to be able to support you, but not in that sort of framework of the maternity services that most of us are familiar with. And we can also then decide to birth outside of the system completely and decide to come away from working with a medical attendant. We can then birth a free birth, or sometimes called a wild pregnancy. If you are choosing to do that, absolutely fine. It is perfectly legal to do that in the UK. The illegal aspect is if anybody is assuming the role of midwife. So it is not illegal to free birth, but it is illegal to impersonate a midwife. So you are, or to say that you are a midwife. So you can perfectly legally birth outside the system. And again, there are some amazing resources out there online. So Sam Gadsden, for instance, is a great person to go and seek out. So if you're looking at home birth, if you're looking at free birth, great resources there for everybody. So to bring all of this back down to those first questions that we had, will my midwife know about hypnobirthing? Chances are your midwife these days will have at least heard of hypnobirthing. Whether or not they are totally on board with it or not is another aspect. But many midwives now are familiar, and not just familiar with hypnobirthing, have often done the training or are familiar with the training now. So yes, it's very likely that they are. And if they're not, you can ask to see somebody who is. And will your midwife support you? Same goes in terms of that code that we talked about, the code that midwives have as their sort of regulation. It says that they need to support you in your choices and options, whether you accept or decline treatment, and they need to support you and document. So yes, you can find those people who are going to support you with your choices and options for pregnancy, for birth, and for beyond as well. So that pretty much answers the questions this week. If you've got any other questions along this line, get in touch, let me know. Or if this has sparked more curiosity, get in touch. If you would like to know more information about hypnobirthing yourself, if you are a parent or want to be a parent, if you are a midwife and you want to know more about hypnobirthing, get in touch. We have got the courses for parents, I've got online courses, and I've just launched my face-to-face courses in Carmarthen. They're going to be starting in November, very excited about that. So if you want any information about those, my online dates are now available on my website, so if you want to follow the bio, you can find those dates. But if you're a midwife or a healthcare professional and you want to know more about training, either to be able to support parents or to be able to actually provide this training yourself, again, DM me, because I've got plenty of options and information about courses for you as a teacher trainer or a midwife trainer as well. So thank you very much for coming and joining me this evening. It's got darker and darker as I was doing this session today. So thank you very much. I will see you again next week. Enjoy your week. Do you do training courses? So thank you very much. Just before we sign off, yes, I do teacher training courses for KGH hypnobirthing. So I'm the senior trainer for KGH. the Catherine Graves Hypnobirthing. And if you would like to do that comprehensive training package where you are then able to teach hypnobirthing yourself, if you head across to kghypnobirthing.com, you will see that there's teacher training packages there, and I do most of the online training for Catherine Graves. So yes, we definitely do. I also have a mentoring program, so for those of you who come and do the teacher training, there's ongoing support after you've done the training as well, so that we can help you get started, help you get out there and teaching. So thank you for that question. Fantastic, Christian. Thank you very much for coming and joining me this evening. It's lovely to see you all, and I will see you again soon. Take care.